The Association of Private Schools in Ghana has described as unfortunate and disappointing the government's decision to suspend academic activities until January 2021. This comes on the back of President Akufo-Addo's announcement on resumption of schools, which will see students in JHS2 and SHS2 returning to school in October. For those in kindergarten to JHS1, they go back to school in 2021 January. Listen to President Akufo-Addo on that announcement, just in case you missed it.
After consultation with the relevant stakeholders, for SHS2 and JHS2 students to return to school from 5th October to 14th December 2020 to complete their academic year. With junior high schools operating with class sizes of 30 and senior high schools with class sizes of 25, SHS2 and JHS2 students will be in school for 10 weeks to study and write their end-of-term examinations. SHS2 students in boarding houses are to return to their various dormitories on 5th October, whilst day students, respecting fully the COVID-19 protocols, will commute from home to their respective schools on the same date. Prior to reopening, all junior and senior high schools will be fumigated and disinfected. Just as was done in the case of final year university, JHS and HHS students, all JHS2 and SHS2 students, as well as all teaching and non-teaching staff, will be given reusable face masks. Each school will be provided with Veronica buckets, gallons of liquid soap, rolls of tissue paper, thermometer guns, and 200 milliliter containers of sanitizers. JHS2 students will be given one hot meal a day. Assemblies and sporting events remain banned, and the use by outsiders of school premises for other activities is still not allowed. We will continue to ensure that each school, which does not have its own sick bay, has been mapped to a health facility and care is provided to the sick by nurses assigned to them. The Ghana Education Service, after further consultations, has decided to postpone the remainder of the academic year for all nursery, kindergarten, primary, JHS1 and SHS1 students. The next academic year will resume in January 2021 with appropriate adjustments made to the curriculum to ensure that nothing is lost from the previous year. The relevant dispositions will also be made so that the presence at the same time in school of all streams of students can occur in safety.
So how do you understand this? How do parents understand this announcement? Some parents have actually been reacting to this. Listen.
If you allow these kids to go to school early, we don't know what will happen. The virus can escalate. It can spread quickly through the kids, though we have low rate of it going or maybe attacking the kids. But then I think we should not risk by asking the kids to go back to school this year. It's better they go in January. By that time, everything has been lowered. So I believe it's in order because the borders will surely be opened tomorrow. And when it's opened, we do not know whether the virus will escalate because of the people that will be coming in. So we cannot risk our kids going back to the classrooms. What Nanado has done is perfect. The SS2 and the JSS2 kids will go back. That will be like a rehearsal, a dress rehearsal for us to see how it will be like.
They say some motive mo frank totofi wa no mo kwasa agenu okwa say okwa eden okwa ehwe enti me de ya le na nkanka na Akufo-Addo no nka se mo fa ne ntena fie enti sa agenu no eye
sani na kan ye mpanimfo se sabi akokorabofo se na tena fie maseduafo and you can because it's young for.
So some people feel, and some people that we've been reacting with feel that it's a bit confusing what the president said. Others seem to simply wholeheartedly accept it, like you heard some of the parents say. But what does it really mean? And that's what we'll be trying to understand. Will students be automatically promoted? If so, what happens to those in private schools who may have completed the syllabi for the term, teaching and learning online? What about those who had no internet at all and who have not learned anything since the lockdown? So let's have a conversation, see if we can clear out that confusion, a little bit of it, perhaps in my own mind. I have President of the Association of Private Schools, Dr. Damasus Torosong, who is joining me. Doc, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. You are muted. You are muted. You're muted.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the wonderful opportunity given me.
Very well. We'll very soon have also joining us for this conversation Professor Anna Mohammed-Mensah. He's Executive Chair of Teacher Education in Sub-Saharan Africa and the Director of School and Community Science and Technology Studies at the University of Education, Winneba, Ghana. He was also part of those who actually drafted the current curricula, so it will be good to hear from him. I also have Executive Director for Institute of Education Studies, IFS, Peter Anti, for this chart. Peter, thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Welcome.
Okay, so I'd like to understand what the announcement that President Akufo-Addo made means to you. I mean, how do you understand it? And I'll start with you both. Let me start with you, Dr. Damasus.
Well, thank you. There is still a little confusing, like you indicate. And I'm sure that the Education Ministry will come to operationalize it a little more. But my understanding of it is that come January, the students will go automatically to their next class. They will be promoted automatically to a higher level. Of course, there are issues to do with whether they have been able to imbibe what they were supposed to learn at their lower levels, who should progress them to the higher levels. Those issues do exist, but from my understanding of the announcement that was given yesterday, I think that they will be progressing to the next level come January. And
that for you means that there won't be any sort of assessment. Is that how it stands out to you?
That's the way it looks to me. Okay. I think there's been the misconception that majority of the students went through virtual learning. Which is a misconception because from our own analysis, it looks like about 20% of students, if not less, went through the virtual learning. So by virtue of whatever virtual learning processes are assumed to have taken place, they are based on that going to promote them to the next levels.
Interesting. Mr. Anti, let me come to you for your own understanding of what President Akufo-Addo said. Does this sync with what Dr. Damasus has just said?
Thank you very much. For us, we have been expectant of this particular move because we have said from day one that it was practically impossible to promote a wholesale reopening of schools. Looking at what is happening across the globe, it was practically not going to be possible because it would have had a lot of logistical challenges on the government. So we were expecting a partial reopening, the kind of reopening whereby a cohort of students go on campus, do the academic work, they complete, and then they leave, then another group goes. That is what we were anticipating. Of course, we were not expecting a total suspension of the academic calendar for a particular group of students till January. But in the wisdom of the managers of our education and upon consultation, I think that is what they want to do. What that practically means is that the students in JHS 1 to KG, as the president indicated, might have to, when school reopens, go through maybe a short period of academic activity that would lead them to obtain certain kind of assessment, and then that can lead to their progression to the next level. I think that is what is going to happen. For automatic promotion, I think that can happen to those at the lower primary level, because there the academic work is not that rigorous, and they can still pick up as they proceed with their academic life. So for automatic promotion, I think that would be something that can be applied to those at the lower primary. But for the upper primary, GHS 1 and then the SHS 1, I'm thinking that there will be a special dispensation for them to go through some periods of academic work, and then they would be promoted based on their performance during that particular period. Now,
that's your own understanding of how this system is supposed to work. So like Dr. Adamasa said, we may have to get the Education Ministry to break this down a little bit for us, explain it, like he said, operationalize it for us. But Doc, I'm coming back to you. You are private school, administrators, teachers. You deal with private school staff. For some of the schools, most is not the right way to put it. For some of the schools, there has been some level of online engagement, studying activities, but not all. Not all the schools have gone through this process. How problematic is this announcement for people who operate within the private sector like you?
Yes, it's very problematic in the sense that, like I indicated, we have less than 20% of our students having gone through any form of online learning.
Okay.
So for kids to be at home for 10 months, remember by January, it would have been 10 months of academic inactivity. The students would have gone rusty in this period. The students would have virtually had some memory lapse. For them to be expected to do some remedial work that will lead to promotion or go into wholesale promotion is going to be very problematic for us. Besides, we had, based on our own analysis, advocated that schools could reopen either this September or October. And we have tabled a lot of proposals to government so that the reopening could take place, and yet we would be in a position to manage the school children such that they will not contract the virus. Indeed, there are some people who are of the view that the school environment could even be safer for our kids than the home environment. Because as they sit at home, it's difficult to tell what they are engaged in when their parents go to work. It's difficult to tell whether they are not going into market centers, some are not going into hawking, going out with their friends and playing football. And in all of this, who is monitoring them to observe the protocols, the COVID-19 protocols? Within the school environment, we are in a position to regulate our school children, ensure that they social distance, ensure that they wash their hands regularly with soap and go through, use hand sanitizers and all of that. We are in a position to do that. In the home situation, there are many kids. And when we talk about this, let's not always look at children in the cities who can remain indoors all the time. We are aware that the vast majority of our children are in the rural areas. So no one should tell us that there's been some effective virtual learning or that postponing reopening until January is going to help us curtail the spread of this virus. I don't think those are tenable arguments.
So at this point, the president has spoken. We were expecting the committee that was tasked to work on this particular issue to come out with a response by middle or getting to the end of September.
21st September.
Exactly. And for you, hearing the president make this announcement ahead of that work by the committee to be made known to all of us, what do you make of that?
It's very shocking, to be honest with you. Very shocking because this committee was to present its report on 21st September. As private schools, we have a rep on the committee that is working on the reopening. And we had been asked to table proposals to the committee on 3rd September. While we were in the process of coming out with our proposals, the president comes and makes this announcement. And even more shocking to us is the fact that we are told from the president's delivery that stakeholders, relevant stakeholders were consulted in arriving, GES consulted relevant stakeholders in coming out with this decision. I don't know which relevant stakeholders they are. If private schools were not consulted or were still in the process of being consulted, I don't know who came out with all these timelines and schedules that were put out for us. It's really been disturbing to us.
To talk to you more about your operations and how it's been affected. I mean, for government teachers, we know that they're getting paid, so the situation with you is peculiar, and I'll come back for us to have a conversation on that. But we've been trying to get information from the GES for them to respond to some of the concerns we're raising in terms of the confusion that's created here. We're not able to get someone to speak, but we're hearing that a decision to automatically promote students has yet to be taken. So I just wanted to chip that in for you to, just note it down. Ms. Auntie, let me come to you on your own thoughts. For the private schools, they're saying that this is very problematic. They are shocked. That's how he describes it. Shocked that the work of the committee is not yet over, but President Akufo-Addo makes this announcement. What do you make of it?
Yes, it's unfortunate that the private schools have to go through this. And when we, as an institute, when we talk of the private schools, we are more concerned about the teachers and other non-teaching staff that are affected by this. We were expecting that the private schools would be able to, the leadership of the private schools will be able to push harder for certain arrangements to be made to enable their employees, the teachers and non-teaching staff, have certain packages to cushion them. But unfortunately, they've not been able to achieve that. I think at this stage, the president has spoken. I don't think that we would be going back on, or he will be going back on this decision. So the way forward is what we are thinking, that the private school teachers should quickly come together and present a proposal to the government and appeal to them that there should be a certain package for them from now till maybe to January, because it is going to be very difficult for them to cope financially. Imagine a family that the father and the mother are all teaching in various private schools, which have to be closed down for this number of period of time. So we are thinking that the talk now should be more of appealing to the government to use the various platforms like the LEAP, the MASLOG, and all those things to find ways and means to cushion these teachers that have been affected through this period. We are also thinking that the corporate Ghana can also take upon itself to assist some of these private school teachers during this particular period of time, because they really need that kind of assistance. And we think that if we are able to make a forceful case to corporate Ghana, to the government, they will be able to collate their information and find ways and means to assist them financially for the period left for things to return to normalcy. But I have to make this point. You see, the decision that we are supposed to suspend classes, for those kind of category of students that have been mentioned, to January, means that the government would have to now redesign their virtual learning platforms. Doc was talking about 20%. That is very true. But then something can be done about it. You see, we are not doing this in isolation. So we always have to learn from what other countries are doing, what have been done already, and other things. So for those in marginalized communities and those in deprived areas, instead of using the virtual teaching whereby maybe they don't have access to their television, the government can now resort to community communication systems and the radio stations, so that they can still reach a vast majority of our students. We know that it is highly impossible to get 100% of the students to enable them to continue their education. But if you're able to, one, increase the number of TV stations that telecast the virtual teaching, 2, use radio stations, and 3, use the community communication system, we'll be able to reach a vast majority of these students who will need to go through some kind of academic work and then wait till the things return to normalcy.
Let me come back to you, Dr. Turosong. He's making a suggestion that you write to government and, put in some sort of appeal to get government to come to your aid. Is that something you're considering?
It's not just something we are considering. It's something we did as far back as 22nd April of this year. The moment this happened, we foresaw what was going to happen. We foresaw the long closure. And we wrote a petition to His Excellency the President. We only got a response of some sort around 10th August of this year, where we referred to the Finance Ministry who were asking us to provide some information for them. So this is something we've been pushing for quite a while. And our teachers have actually, our workers, I must say, have actually been very patient. They've been patient, and we have played a major role in keeping the lid on their explosion, because a number of them are getting very worried and getting agitated. And I'm sure you would have seen news flying around that a number of them intend either demonstrating or boycotting elections and all manner of things. We have reached a point where we are saying that we can no longer control whatever our teachers do. And indeed, we will have to support any legitimate action our teachers take in order to get government to listen to them. It is not going to be the first of its kind to have a government come to the aid of private sector workers. Indeed, in this COVID era, we know of some jurisdictions where government is paying a certain amount of money to all private sector workers who are unemployed. In the UK, at some point, 85% of their salaries were being paid to them. We are not even asking that government should pay them full salaries. We are asking that at least some mitigation measures be taken to alleviate their plight. And they deserve it.
And you're saying that since you put in the request back in, was it April you said, you have not heard any?
April 22nd. Yes.
What exactly have you heard in terms of response up until now?
Yeah, like I indicated, the Finance Ministry asked us for some data to be provided.
Have you provided?
Was around 10th. This was around 10th.
Okay.
And much of the data is quite detailed, and we are galvanizing around the entire country to collect this data and provide.
In that case, there is something being done, which means that you're still collating your data to be able to assess whatever support government can give you. So it's work in progress. Is that correct?
Well, we might say it's work in progress. It's just the time lapse between April and August before you get any response at all, which is the problem. And no one knows when the data is eventually provided how much longer it might take before some relief comes.
Okay.
Maybe I don't know if I can come in.
Yes, I'll let you come in. I just want him to say something for me, Mr. Anthony. Just hang on for me a second. Dr. Turosong, I want you to paint for me a picture, not just for me, for anybody who is watching, and perhaps for those at the Finance Ministry who are waiting for your information to act. Give us a picture of how this is actually affecting people. Teachers, they're agitated, you've said that, but there are several schools, there are big schools, but there are also several small schools, several small private schools that are serving communities across the country. Give us a typical picture of these schools in remote areas, private schools in remote areas taking, say, 100, 200 cities, for example, for a month. How is this affecting them?
Any school that is taking 100, 200 Ghana cedis as I mean, I don't know whether you are saying as fees per month or the teachers taking the 100, 200 Ghana cedis.
Fees.
Yeah, any such school will not be described in our context as a deprived school at all. I am telling you that we have what we call a vast number of schools known as low-cost private schools. These schools, some take as little as 30 Ghana cedis a term from their children, from the school children. And with the 30 Ghana taken from each child, the proprietor is supposed to provide infrastructure. In some cases, is supposed to provide feeding, some allowances for its workers, and run their entire operations. And you have teachers in some of these schools taking as little as 150 Ghana cedis per month as their allowances. And this is not coming from me. This is coming from USAID. They did a major research into low-cost private schools and came out with this data.
Aye.
So for such schools where a teacher was living on 150 Ghana cedis per month, a teacher who has a family and does no other economic activity, you can imagine what they will be going through, particularly in this era of COVID, when the cost of living has gone up dramatically for them. On a daily basis, we have many teachers who are inundating us of calls. And sometimes when they call, they are virtually crying. And we are at a point where we as proprietors are having to dip our hands in our pockets, whatever little money you get. You look out for the most needy among your workers and try to support them, just to see them through. So in actual fact, we have, I'm sure some of you would have even seen social media messages of private school teachers who are crying like little children because of the state in which they are. So the situation is more dire than many people think. And that's why I think that something ought to be done quickly before there's an explosion of some sort.
Okay. Mr. Ante, you wanted to come in there, and I believe it was on the back of this same topic.
Yes, what I wanted to say was that, Doc, we rightly remember that you sent that petition in April. But during that time, you know that there was a lot of uncertainties surrounding COVID, and we didn't know whether schools would be reopened or schools would be closed forever. So I think that at this time that there's a lot, we are sure, we know that we are not going back to school, and there's pressure on the private schools. I think this is the time that you might have to push further forcefully so that everybody in the country understand the plight of the private school teacher. And we think that if you are able to maybe satisfy some of the things that have been asked by the Ministry of Finance, you should be able to get something out of it for your teachers as early as possible. Okay. We this afternoon have released a statement calling on government to, as early as possible, attend to the teachers in these private schools, because we feel for them. I have friends who teach in private schools who are going through serious financial difficulties, and I can really attest to that. So it is just a decision that we have to take, and the leadership of the private schools would have to force and push this for their teachers.
Okay. I'll take your final thoughts on this. I was hoping that we'll get Professor Anamwa Mensah to join us. We had him booked for this conversation, so we can understand, what issues, what's going to happen with the curriculum. Now that as you say, the academic calendar, this particular one has been suspended, we're going back to school. This automatic promotion. I know, Mr. Ante, that you've given us your thoughts about it. It is still not the certain position by government. We've tried to get something from the GES. We have not had it. So it still looks like there's still a little bit of confusion lingering there. This is a subject we'll be talking about throughout the week. And hopefully by the end of the week, we'll have some, certain answers. I'll take your final words before we go. I'll start with you, Mr. Ante. Your final words, if you can make it very brief for me, I'll be grateful.
So one, we should not experience what we experienced with the reopening of the schools for the final year students. Provision of PPEs, linking schools to health facilities, all those things that the president mentioned should be operationalized. We don't want to have the challenges that we had with the initial reopening of schools. Two, the virtual learning system should be made more operational and more useful at this time. And then three, of course, the government, as a matter of urgency, should attend to the private school teachers. It's something that they need to do.
All right. Doc, your final words.
Yes. I think that is possible for us to still have a conversation around bringing back reopening, pushing reopening forward a bit to, say, October for all other levels. At our level, we are ready to support government in having schools reopen. Some of the burden that government is going to bear by way of provision of PPEs to the schools, we are ready to enter into the conversation of supporting to provide some of these. But to have our children sit at home for 10 months will be very disastrous to our educational system, and we don't think that's the way to go. Okay,
so you are saying, if I got you clear, that the reopening in October should not be limited to only JHS2 and SHS2, it should be extended to all other levels.
Absolutely. All other levels should be able to reopen in October, I believe.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for this conversation. There are still a bit of uncertainty, a bit of clarity, needed to understand exactly what is going to happen. But we do know that the committee is still at work. President of the Association of Private Schools, Dr. Damasus Turosong, is who you heard there. Also, Executive Director for the Institute of Education Studies, AFES, Peter Ante. They joined me in this conversation. We're able to have Professor Anna Mensah to help us. He designed the part of those who designed the curriculum, so he would have helped us understand what exactly is going to happen to the curriculum. But as you've heard them say, we need the education service to operationalize what President Akufo-Addo said, give it a bit of clarity. And for the private schools, they think that this is more like an automated promotion of people in JHS1, etc., as well as they believe there is a misconception as well that virtual education has gone on for so many people. They say only 20% of students got to have that. 10 months of inactivity for students, they think is not enough to promote them into the next level. And they want the school reopening to be in October, to be across all levels, not limited to JHS2 and SHS2. And they think that it is shocking that President Akufo-Addo speaks before the committee putting together some work on reopening schools finished their work.